Hey guys, welcome to another After Effects tutorial. In this one, we are going to be creating this sort of a volume knob UI element from scratch using only shape layers. And then we're going to create a slider, which is going to drive rotation, glow color, and appearance of elements. So without further ado, let's jump straight into After Effects and learn something cool. Welcome back. So this is what we are going to be creating today. As you can see, a single slider control is driving the rotation of the knob, glow color, and appearance of elements. So let's delete this and start from scratch. Delete everything. Delete. Composition, new composition. I'm going to create a 1080p composition, 30 frames per second, 4 seconds long. That's okay. I'm going to name it volume knob. Now, first things first, I'm going to import a image, which I'm going to use as a color palette. Now I'm going to drag it in the timeline. I'm going to scale it a bit and move it aside. There. Like so. And now, let's start. Okay, we're ready to go. First layer is going to be a rectangle. Now, if I double click on this layer, it is going to create a rectangle of dimensions of your composition you're currently working in. So this is a 1080p rectangle, and you can see that by going here. As you can see, size is 920 by 1080. I'm going to rename it to background, and I'm going to apply a different color to it. Now I'm going to create an ellipse. Double click. As you can see, it is stretched out, so we are going to change the size of it by going to ellipse, ellipse path, and changing this to 500 by 500. Now I'm going to change the color. Then I'm going to apply effect, blur, fast blur, and I'm going to just blur it out so it will blend better with the background layer. Like so. Okay. And I'm going to rename this to background highlight. Next one is, I'm going to start with another ellipse. Double click. And this one will have 380 pixels by 380. And we're going to call this one glow base. And we're going to apply a darker color to it. Something like this. Next one will be the light itself. So I'm going to duplicate this base, rename it to light. Okay. Now I'm going to change the size of it to 365. I'm going to apply effect generate fill, and I'm going to add a slight glow to it. So effect stylize glow. Color is this, and for glow we're going to leave the threshold to 60, glow radius to 25, and the glow intensity to 0.5. Like so. I'm also going to apply a fast blur effect. Let me put this above the glow and give it a 10 pixel radius. Now I'm going to create a slight rim light, which is going to have the exact same color as this light here. And in order to do so, I'm going to duplicate the base again because I want to have it right on the edge of the base. I'm going to say, rename it to highlight. Change the fill. Click on the fill and click none. And then apply a stroke by clicking on this crossed over color section. Okay. And we are going to apply the same color. Okay. And we're going to give it a 2 pixel amount. Going to change the opacity down. This will be a barely visible effect. So when this light glows up, it will give a slight edge to the base. Okay. Next in line is the actual knob base. So for the knob base, we're going to duplicate again the base layer. And we're going to change the dimensions to something like 350. Okay. And the color, I think we're good to go with this one. Yeah, it's okay. Now let's duplicate the knob base and rename it to knob base dial. I'm going to change the size to 335. And I'm going to right click on it, go to layer styles and apply gradient overlay. Now I'm going to go to edit gradient, gradient overlay. First of all, I'm going to change the angle to 270 degrees. And I'm going to go to edit gradient. So the first color is going to be this one. And the second one, something just a bit off black. Like so. Now I'm going to collapse this, duplicate it, rename it to knob base dial highlight. I'm going to remove the gradient effect by selecting the layer styles and clicking on delete on my keyboard. Now go effect. First of all, I'm going to change the fill to completely black. Go effect, perspective, bevel alpha. Now I'm going to add edge thickness of 3.5, light angle 0, and light intensity 0.6. Now I'm going to change the overlay mode to add. If you can't see this mode, you need to toggle switches modes here. So change it to add, and I'm going to change the opacity of this layer to 35%. So we have this kind of effect. Let's duplicate the knob base dial, put it above the highlight, and rename it to knob base dial small. Let's change the size of this layer to 200. Go to gradient overlay, edit gradient, and add new values. You can copy mine if you like. Do the same thing like before. We're going to duplicate this knob base dial small, rename it to highlight. Now we're going to delete the layer styles. While still selected, change the color to pure black. Go to effects, perspective, bevel alpha. Now change the angle to 0 and light intensity to 0.6. Change the mode to add and the opacity to 35%. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Well, I would like to add just a slight outline to this. So I'm going to select the knob base dial small. I'm going to duplicate it, rename it to knob base dial small border. Put it below the knob base dial small. Disable the layer styles if any are present. Change the color to something dark. This is okay. And change the size to 205. Just a slight outline to make this highlight pop out even more. And we're going to lower the opacity to 30%. Something like that. Now, one thing I would like to do is to duplicate the knob base dial again. And I'm going to rename it to shadow. Change the color to something lighter. Okay. I'm going to move it upwards a bit. From 540 to 520. I'm going to change the size to 200 pixels. And then I'm going to apply a fast blur effect. So effect, I need to have this selected. Effect, blur, fast blur. And I'm going to add a value of 40. There. This looks good. Now, what we have left to do is to create the dots around the knob and slight notch over here on the knob itself. And we're pretty much done. Okay, so creating the dots. How we can do that is by selecting the shape layers again. Using the ellipse tool, we're going to disable the stroke effect. Now we're going to double click on an ellipse. Change the fill to something darker. Go to ellipse, ellipse path, and change the size to 20 pixels by 20 pixels. So we have our dot. Now I'm going to go to transform, go to position, and I'm going to move it to minus 230. Now you probably can't see this, so that's why I'm going to adjust this color so you can see what we're going to do here. Now, while we have these, I'm going to rename this first volume dots base. Open it up, go to add repeater. Now open the repeater up. We're going to go to transform repeater. I'm going to zero out the position. And we're interested in rotation. So that is what we want. So first I'm going to go to transform, go to negative 135 degrees. Okay. Now the repeater will go in increments of 20 degrees. So let's place the 20 and let's give it a 14 copies. That looks cool. Duplicate the volume dots base, rename it to volume dots base highlight. Go to perspective, effects, perspective, bevel alpha. Give it a edge thickness of 1.5, the angle to minus 180, and the light intensity to 1. Now change the mode to add, and the opacity to 15%. Okay, now we're going to duplicate the volume dots base again, place it above the highlight, and we're going to add LED, open the content, ellipse, ellipse path, and change the size to 8 pixels. Change the color to this blue one over here. And then we're going to dial the opacity down. And I want to achieve a slight rim effect, and I'm going to do that by right-clicking on this layer, going to Layer Styles, Inner Glow. There it is. Leave the default values. Change the opacity down even more to about 5%. So it's barely visible. Now duplicate this once again, this dots LED base. Remove the base from its name. go with the opacity to 100 and remove the layer styles. Okay. Only thing left to do is to have a small notch over here. And let's do that by creating another rectangle. So this one will have the slightly darker color. Double click on it, go to rectangle, rectangle path, unlock the size, type in 12 pixels by 36, and change the position to -65, and the roundness to 6. So we have something like this. You probably already know what's going to happen, so we're going to first rename this layer to knob notch. Then we're going to duplicate it, rename it to highlight, change the color to pure black, go to effects, perspective, bevel alpha, edge thickness 1.5, -180 for the light angle, and light intensity 1. Change the mode to add, and change the opacity to 20%. By the way, I'm going to opacity by pressing T. Okay, now we need just a small LED element over here. We're going to make it by duplicating the rectangle, which is our knob notch. We're going to rename it to LED. Apply a different color. Okay. We need to change the size to 4 and 24. And we're going to change the roundness to 4, since this is a smaller element. Also, I'm going to apply the same glow effect we have on our glow base light. So I'm going to select the glow, copy, go here, paste. I'll need to change this highlight background layer to something darker. And here is our volume knob. So the next thing we're going to do is to create a control layer. Delete this color palette since I don't need it anymore. Now I'm going to go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer. I'm going to rename it straight away. Controls. Go to Effect, Expression Controls, and I'm going to select a slider control. This slider value will go from 0 to 100, so it is already set up. Rename it to Volume Control 0 to 100. And I'm going to add another effect, which is going to be Expression Controls Color Control. And here we are going to control the color of these elements over here. Rename it to Glow Color. And we're going to select the same color. It seems like I forgot to apply the same glow effect to these little LED dots. So copy the glow. There we go. Now, I'm going to select the controls layer and lock it so it is always on top. First thing I'm going to link to it is actually the position of this knob itself, better yet rotation. So if I select the knob notch and apply a rotation here, you can see that the highlight and the LED effect is staying in its place. That's why I'm going to select both of these elements and parent them to the knob notch. And now when I rotate this, everything goes together. Now press R to bring up the rotation. Alt-click on the stopwatch, and this is what we are going to be typing. Let me expand this a bit more. So I'm going to be typing T equals. Now I'm going to select this pick whip and drag it straight to the slider. Okay. Add a semicolon, enter, linear, open parentheses, T, comma, 0, comma, 100, comma. Now we're going to decide at which point this knob is going to start. So if we rotate it to a negative 135 degrees, it will line up with this LED dot. I'm going to type in minus 135, comma, 135. So this is negative value and this is positive. So it's going to go from this dot to this dot. And we're going to close the parentheses. And as you can see, if we now move the slider, the volume is moving. So what this actually means is that if the slider is at value 0, the rotation will be at a negative 135 degrees. But if we move the slider to 100, the rotation will have a positive 135 degrees. Add this expression to the opacity of this glow layer. So I'm going to go here, glow base light, press T to bring up the opacity, and we're going to type in same kind of thing like before. Alt click on the opacity, T equals this slider over here, semicolon, linear, open parentheses, T, comma, slider value of 0, comma, slider value of 100, comma, let's leave it at 5% opacity to 100% opacity, close parentheses. So if I move the slider back to 0, you can barely see the light, and that is what I want. Now once we are here, I'm going to copy this and paste it in the glow base highlight. So press T, alt click on opacity, paste, but I'm going to change the values. So the minimum opacity will be, for example, 2% and maximum 20. Okay, that looks good. While I'm still here, I'm going to go to Content, Ellipse, Stroke, and I'm going to alt click on this color, pick whip it to the glow color. Do the same for the glow base light, but instead of the stroke, we're going to go with a fill. Pick whip that there. And we need to adjust those little LED lights. And we can do that by going to this knob notch LED. And we're going to go to volume dots LED, content, repeater, go to copies. I'm going to paste this here. So if the slider has a 0% value, we'll have a single dot visible. But if we crank it up to 100, we'll have 14 copies. So let me just do this again. There we go. And let's check it out. Yep, it's working as it should. Only thing left is to link the color. Ellipse, fill, alt click on the color. Go to the color. And we're done. So I'm going to duplicate this layer and rename it CC. I meant to say composition. And I'm going to open it again. Delete everything inside and drag our volume knob. Now I'm going to duplicate the volume knob again. Go to I can uncheck this for now. Effect, blur, Gaussian blur. Give it a 30, 40, 35% will be enough. 35%, go to mode screen. Change the opacity to 35, just to give it a bit of a glow. Now I'm going to create another layer, new adjustment layer. And I'm going to apply, effect, sharpen, unsharp mask. I'm going to give it a 90 amount, so everything looks nice and sharp. I'm going to rename this layer. Now I'm going to go to layer, new adjustment layer, and we're going to create another layer which will have a noise effect to it, so we can just smooth out the ramping which can sometimes appear. So I'm going to go to noise and grain, noise, uncheck the use color noise, and set it to 2%. And there we go. If I go back to the volume knob and lock this effect here, you will see that once I move the slider over here, everything should work just fine. And we can also change the color to something different. Oops, we forgot to link the notch LED. So let's do that right here. Notch LED, fill, alt click on the color, pick whip the glow color, and now everything is working. And that's it, guys. Hopefully you found this tutorial useful. I will leave the free project in the download link below. And until next time, take care. I wish you all the best and bye.